Okay, cool. So thanks very much. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second AntonioTalks talk show. Today, I've got a really special guest on the show. Someone who I've worked with for a couple of years, or over the past couple of years, before I was in a startup, before I ran my own company. I've got the great Adam Nagus on the show. Thank you very much, Adam, for coming on.
Thanks for the invite.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
Did you find the office okay?
Yeah, I'm actually in a WeWork as well, so
Okay.
I'm in Aldgate, so it's very similar.
Great. So yeah, Adam, really appreciate you coming on. I want to talk about I've got lots of questions for you, particularly around your expertise, because I know that you are an absolute don in the spaces of where we're going to talk about analytics and virtual reality. So I suppose before we get into that, I'd love to know a bit more about you, or for the audience, if you could tell them a bit more about who you are, your background, why are you now in a position that you're in the position to do, why you're a thought leader in this space?
Okay, so no pressure. So my history really is 15 years working with data, which sounds quite dull and boring, but the way I started out was straight out of university and computer scientist, did a master's in communications and crisis management, and then worked on large projects with the NHS and Accenture. I did a lot of work in data migration, which was moving data around, wasn't too exciting, and then I learned about business intelligence and reporting and moved into that. After about 10 years, I got quite bored of BI. I didn't really understand the value we were adding to clients, which was literally giving them a list of numbers in a spreadsheet or report and saying, this is what you asked for, go ahead. About 5 years ago, I got introduced to more visualization technologies like data visualization, and created a visual analytics practice, which was amazing. We could build apps, we could innovate, we're using new technology, we could actually solve business problems, and the adoption rate was amazing. Everybody said, this is groundbreaking, it's really helping the business, and from then on, we just grew and grew and grew, and now that's what we specialize in, which is really storytelling, for want of a better phrase, which is taking data, taking complex problems, and turning them into a story that everybody can understand.
So what's your current company called?
DigiMasters.
DigiMasters. Okay, great name. Really, really like that name, actually. So DigiMasters, so your storytelling. So let's just get back into this, because obviously, I've recruited in this space, in business intelligence, visual analytics. I've recruited for you, essentially. So my past, I understand this stuff. However, for people out there who don't understand it, analytics is this word that's just thrown around. It's a buzzword. It's hot at the moment. And I want to get onto in a bit around our data scientists and new rock stars, because I think they are. If you look at the way these guys are sought after, and everyone wants their advice. So you essentially are a new rock star in the modern day rock star. But we'll get there in a moment. So tell me about the BI, VA, visual analytics, business intelligence. What is the difference?
So BI is boring, VA is sexy.
Right.
Oh, you want more information?
Yeah.
Okay. So the way I usually explain it is business intelligence or management information, MI, has very much been report driven, which is a table of information. Sometimes you might get some charts, you might get spreadsheets, you might be using things like business objects, MicroStrategy, Cognos, etc. But if you just get a list of information, the best thing that comes out of that is you have a question, another question to answer. But does that report that you have answer that question, or do you have to go somewhere else to find that information? Is the data turned into insight? Is it enough for you to actually make a decision based on facts, or are you still just going with your gut and hoping for the best outcome? A good example would be, let's say, the telco industry, or even the broadband industry. Over the last 10 years, not everybody had phones. So you were always having new customers, and you could always find somebody new to sell to. But then everybody's got a mobile phone now. Everybody's got internet, let's say in the Western world. So now you have to think about, how do you take market share from your competitors? How do you keep the customers you already have? What services do you offer? What's working, what isn't working? And that's really how you move away from just business intelligence looking at numbers to actually wanting analytics. You want to understand who your customers are. You want to segment them. You want to find out what they like. You want to offer them stuff to keep them loyal. And you can't do that just by looking at numbers. You need statistics. You need prediction. You need to understand the output that's coming. And that's where visualization comes in. And then you all want it in one place. When I tried to start Visual Analytics, the concept of having an app was a bit alien in the enterprise world, but I have Apple to thank a lot for with the iPhone and iOS. Now when you say an app, everybody just assumes something really intuitive, really easy to use, that you just click on, it gives you the answer, and you can do stuff in the app. You don't just get the answer, you could book a ticket. The great example I like is Ticketmaster. So most people will know who Ticketmaster is. Imagine if you had the Ticketmaster app and all it did was tell you how many seats there are in a theatre. All right, that's great. It's a rubbish app, I'm deleting it. What you would expect is it'll tell you what shows are on, when they're on, where the theatre is. It'll give you a visualization of where the seating plan is. It'll let you select your seat. It'll also have e-commerce workflow built in so you can buy the actual seat, all within the same app. You wouldn't want to go from one app to another app to another app just to do that single workflow. But in analytics or in BI, you had to do that. So take the concept, the user experience, the workflow, all the actions you can do in an app and put analytics into it. And that's what we're trying to do with visual analytics.
Great. And so I'm quite curious. Is really, I mean, how can you make predictions on people based on data? It really is some concept in my head, and maybe because I don't understand it, I haven't seen it. But I think that how can I go and make a prediction of what someone's going to purchase because based on data? Like, how can I predict that? Because we're humans, right? Are we? Is it because we're creatures of habit, or what is it?
Well, pretty much. You have to remember that advanced analytics, forecasting, prediction is all about probability. It's not guaranteed in any way. What we do is we basically say it's very likely that this will happen. And the most simple form is a recommendation engine when you're talking about retail and consumers. So you look at someone and they may be male, they may live in a similar area, have a similar income, have bought certain things, and you look for someone that looks almost identical, has bought the same things, is the same gender, has the same background, and then the probability of them also wanting another thing that the other person bought is quite high. So then you start recommending that maybe they want this or maybe they want that. That's a case of how you do recommendation. Other sorts of forecasting is just looking back at lots of history, learning what's happened, and then being able to use that to predict what might happen in the future. It isn't complicated, the concepts. It's not looking into a crystal ball or anything. It's just lots of historic data, looking for patterns, and then using those patterns to predict what might happen in the future.
And what's the best examples you've seen of this, and the most sort of real life problem-solving examples that you've seen?
Yeah. So from my perspective, I love what Amazon's done. I'm a big fan of the analytics. So what they do is they don't just come up and recommend to you what you might want to buy next. They've actually built into their logistics advanced analytics. So they'll move their inventory to different depots around the country, predicting that you might want to buy it. And that's how they can do Prime Now, same-day delivery. So they think that you're probably going to buy something.
So they're actually moving real products based on just maybe you will, or probably, as you said, that you're going to want to buy shower gel.
Yes.
No way.
That's the only way that they can ship so many products next day on Prime or same day on Prime Now.
Yeah.
And everybody is trying to replicate that. And that's something that we're working on right now, is how you take recommendation engines and don't just do a B2C model, so directly to the consumer, but how do you integrate that into your entire end-to-end workflow to make everything more efficient? I think what they've done is amazing, and the new offerings they're bringing out and the innovation they're doing, it's definitely a company to invest in my opinion.
What are your thoughts on Alexa?
Alexa is a perfect example. I wouldn't say digital assistants are the be all and end all. They have a lot of problems still, but I've got 5 Echoes in my house.
No way.
I've got the spots, I've got the dots, and I've got the Echo itself, and I use it to control my entire home. And from a business perspective, I still think there's a long way to go to make them really, really useful. But from a consumer perspective, I find it great just playing music through the Sonos, setting the mood, changing the lights. All of that is through Alexa right now. And the way they've built a AWS cloud, the Amazon cloud, and have everything integrated, it's amazing. It's made my life so much easier, being able to spin up analytics environments in hours and get things deployed to clients in a matter of hours as well. So I'm a big fan of what they've done.
So let's take Alexa at the moment. So I've been I don't have any Alexa products. Funny enough, the first time I used an Alexa product was from my mum. She purchased one, and obviously she's not a techie. My mum just has an iPhone, but she loves gimmicks. So she purchased an Alexa, and I went round for Sunday dinner a couple of weeks ago, and I literally had the most fun just asking Alexa to tell me stories. You know, obviously my son was there too. I had the most fun, even playing 21 questions. Like it was phenomenal. So this whole concept of Alexa's been opened up to me now, and it's really bad because, to be honest, I should have known about that before, but I was sort of sidelining it like most people are doing right now. Most people are in my mindset that, it's voice. The experience I've had with Siri I thought, well, maybe it's going to be the same as the experience I've had with Siri, but it's so different, right? The actual experience you have with Alexa is phenomenal. And so in future, I will see. So I see it as, I'm looking for a job. We're actually recruited. We're part of our roadmap this year is to create an Alexa skill, or I suppose that's what they call it. I was going to say app, but yeah, skill. Part of our roadmap is to do that, so that we can, as a consumer or as a person, I can go to Alexa. Alexa, who hires for UI? Who hires for UX and visual analytics? And it will give me all the companies that hire for those skills.
We did that.
Did you?
We did it with Cortana.
Right.
So we integrated Cortana into ClickSense, which is a visual analytics tool, which has a lot of APIs. So we had Cortana saying, open our dashboard on this, or show me the sales numbers for that. And it brought it up on the computer, and it was all integrated into Windows. So that's why we used Cortana over Alexa at the time. We've also had Alexa integrated into ClickSense. Back at Accenture, when we were sponsoring the RBS Six Nations, we had Alexa integrated into ClickSense to tell us the results of the rugby, tell us who was the best player, and give us the statistics.
Actually, can we just go into that, because this is a fucking awesome example of like how you guys are, or how you created this amazing. I guess I don't even know what to call it, because it was beyond my comprehension of what technology could do, and then I saw it happen. So just give us some insight into the RBS, but then also the predictions that happened in there, and tell me what the results were, what the outcomes were of those predictions.
So in a previous life, when we were the technology sponsor, visual analytics. We did a lot of work with the RBS Six Nations. Obviously, we had the official app on iOS and Android whilst Accenture were sponsoring, but we actually put analytics into the app, so you could see the momentum of the actual games. And when I say momentum, I'm not talking about possession percentage like you get on football. It was about really understanding the ebb and flow of the game and visualizing that. Another aspect of it was the prediction, as you mentioned. So we had a predictive algorithm integrated into our open source visualization. So we were using what's called D3 JavaScript, as well as Click as the backend, to actually demonstrate the ebb and flow of the game, and had a prediction line that was updated every pretty much 10 to 30 seconds that showed what was happening in the game and how that impacted the prediction as it went along. The accuracy, pretty spot on. The only time it really failed was when there was a draw. It is extremely difficult to predict a draw. But what we tried to do from a visualization perspective is we combined the ebb and flow on a single visualization. We had the prediction line on the same graph. And every time there was build-up of momentum, we actually put where the tries were, or any cards or any penalties or things like that. So you could actually get the context of what happened in that build-up. So you know there was a build-up, but what actually happened? What was the context? So
Yeah.
we had 3 things inside a single visualization.
So this prediction of a draw, is it because there has to be one outcome, right? Someone has to win, and is that a flaw in technology, or is that actually, could you build it in to predict a draw?
I think with more time, more data, we could predict a draw. It's just a lot harder. We were using data from RBS Six Nations, so we didn't take into account all the other internationals this team had played. Also within sports, with all the players changing, the squads changing, it's very hard to have something that's stable that you can look at back and say, this is what's going to happen. So most of the time you predict, heads or tails, win or lose. It's much harder then to predict the score, and it's even harder again to predict the score is going to be the same. I think with more time and more data, we can actually get closer to predicting draws. It's just for this type of project, we just didn't have that capability at the time.
Amazing. So let's talk a bit more about how, the recruitment industry, and I will hold my hand up and say the recruitment industry is a very old school space. I don't know how much you've had dealing with obviously you're dealing with recruiters, but actually looking at all the internal stuff. I'm sure you actually have, to be honest. So analytics is something that I speak to a lot of employers, I speak to a lot of recruitment agencies. Everyone is banding about, we're using analytics to better our, talent pipelines. But I really don't think they are, because I don't think there's a proper solution out there which actually can give employers the insights that they need. And I don't think there is a solution out there which is as intuitive as a click desktop app or whatever, or a Tableau app. So I'm really keen to understand what you're doing in this space, because what you sent over a couple of weeks ago to me looked like actually it's something that is what I would use if I was a head of resourcing. I would use if I was a head of talent acquisition. So tell me a bit more about the vision of why. I know it's not just dedicated to talent acquisition, and I know that, but tell me a bit more about the vision of why you feel like what you're creating is going to transform the way people do talent pipelining.
So as a hiring director for years, there were a lot of potential issues that came up, a lot of bottlenecks in the process, and it wasn't as transparent as I hoped it would be. And that's what Visual Analytics focuses on. It's not just about different types of tools, and it's not about just making visualizations. It's about a different methodology, which is called user-centric design. And that's about understanding the problems the users have instead of asking them what their requirements are. So I asked myself, as a hiring director, what are the problems I have? And some of the answers that I came up with was, I didn't know where the CVs were coming from. I didn't know what quality I was getting. I didn't know if the bottleneck was that my team wasn't doing enough interviews for your team. I didn't know if when I was getting the CVs, how many of them were getting through to offers. And then I didn't know the offers we were making, how long they stayed in the company. And I wanted to understand quality. I wanted to understand the entire end-to-end journey, and I wanted to make it much more efficient. I also wanted to make sure I wasn't hiring too many people. I wanted to know how many open roles we had so that we could fill them. We didn't want people coming on board and not doing anything, and we didn't want to break any business cases. So all of these issues I had. I then spoke to the other side, so the recruiters, particularly been working with a company called Eden Smith. And they're quite interesting because they are looking at how to be consultants in this area and specialize in data recruitment for data scientists and things like that. So it was a good company to me to partner with. And they told me more about the other side of the recruitment, what they feel that they need, and what they don't get from their customers and clients when they're serving like companies like Accenture and Deloitte or Microsoft, etc. So what we did was we took all these problems and we came up with a talent management app, a visual analytics app. It's all open source. We didn't pick a particular technology. And this is about identifying certain KPIs, like who the candidates are, who's in the pipeline, but also showing you where the CVs were coming from, what the quality is, who is certified to interview, and who's not pulling their weight. So that if you were the head of recruitment, you could go to the business and say, we need you to do this, you're not doing enough. Or they could go to their agencies and say, you're not giving us enough, or what you're giving isn't correct and they're not making it through. So it allows different stakeholders to have those difficult conversations, and it should build better relationships between external agencies, internal sourcing teams, and also the hiring managers and the line managers, etc. So that's what the vision is. And instead of just pitching that, we just went ahead and built an illustration. So an interactive illustration, you can see the user experience. We modularized it, so if there's anything missing, you can just add it. We looked at Workday, we looked at some of the ATS systems, we looked at different HR systems, and we realized that we could easily get hold of this data and build it into an analytics app, and it wouldn't take that long. Our vision now is to do more around HR analytics. So once you've got people, I want to track for at least 12 months, if not 2 years, how well they're doing in the company. So it doesn't just end when you make the offer and they arrive. How long did they stay? Did they leave? Did they get fired? Did we promote them? And what's the probability around them staying longer? Because it's very expensive to lose a resource and then to hire new people. So we've looked at things like how much holiday are they using? How many training days do they take? How long are the projects they're on? How big are the teams they're on? How many out of city hours are they doing? And all of these are factors around why somebody might want to leave. And then we're building a what if analytics aspect to it, which means what happens if I increase their salary? What happens if I give them more holiday? What happens if I bring them onto projects which are closer to home?
And what happens?
Well, the probability of them leaving changes. So as you're just dragging, so don't have to be a data scientist, you just drag the model we're using updates in the background, and based on all the history of the data in your company, and also the history that we've learned from working with lots of different companies, that allows you to say, right, this is what we need to do to reduce the probability of they're leaving from 70% down to 40%.
So this is mind blowing, by the way. Like this, and it sounds fantastic. It sounds too good to be true, to be honest, Adam. And so I need to know, or I don't need to know, but people out there will probably need to know that. So how accurate are these probability models? Obviously, it's probability, right? But how accurate? Do you know that yet, or how do you know if I increase that someone's salary that they're going to stay? Because the culture could be shit, right?
Yeah. So that's why it's not about one driver. Everything has to be looked at holistically. So you can't just have increased salary. What does that do to the model? It takes into account everything else in their history, and then looks at the overall data.
And it's all based on their history.
It's their history.
Yeah.
And the algorithm has worked out that if you do make a change, because it's looked at the history of many other people who were in similar situations that did leave, that's how you teach a model. So it's
fantastic.
You can't do it individually. You can't just be a new. This wouldn't work for a new company necessarily, unless that they used an algorithm that we developed based on history from similar companies.
Of course.
So if you're a startup and you wanted to use it, and you're in a new industry almost, this wouldn't work.
But if you were an EY of the world, we have lots of data on EY. If so, you could go to a KPMG and say, actually, we've already built it. We've already have this.
Yes.
So how does an EY or a KPMG feel about you taking that data and having that, and then using for another company per se?
So when we're going to market and we're talking about commercials, there are different ways we can do it. So either we can base it just on your data, we can actually give you everything and then even buy the intellectual property, and that's something that you can take in-house. Or we can run it as a service, as a subscription in the cloud, which means that we take anonymized information. We don't need to know who the individuals are. We just need to know what their history was. And if they're providing that data as more of a partner model, then they just have to pay a subscription to use the platform, and they get the benefit of the fact that we've got Deloitte's data in there potentially as well, but nobody would know where it came from. So it's all about the greater good, because it's not about them losing IP or losing their data. It's about them helping the algorithm get smarter, and then they would reap the rewards as well.
Amazing. And so I think let's think about this from a perspective. So you've dealt with recruiters internally. What do you think? So obviously, you dealt with me as a recruiter.
Terrible, yeah. Really bad experience. Yeah.
Really poor experience. Actually, I wasn't actually a recruiter. I didn't source for you, which I was more the management of it. So, I think I've done it right. No, but honestly speaking, so what are your thoughts on recruiters? Like, what and let's talk firstly internal, and then let's talk about agency recruiters. So what are your thoughts on recruiters?
I preferred the internal route for quite some time because you had that direct interaction. I could literally walk over to your team and say, what's going on? They could come over, they came to our events, and I spent a lot of time with sources trying to get them to understand what visual analytics was, mainly because it was a new concept. So somebody that had been hiring for BI for 20 years, great. I wasn't BI. I was looking for very young talent. I was looking for clever talent, clever millennials that would come in and were more creative. Because design was so important, I needed them to understand there was a different way of working. I wanted them to embrace agile instead of waterfall delivery. So I had to make sure that the recruiters and the sources didn't just go and say, right, we're looking for BI, but they can use Click or Tableau. I didn't want that. So having that interaction with the internal team day in and day out meant the quality I was getting from that team was very good. But one of the things that you did and your team was when you did need the extra support and you brought in externals, you actually brought them into the office and you got me to pitch to them. So I took them through all our go-to-market material and sales material of what we do when we talk to our clients. And they actually got and understood it and really embraced what we were trying to do. And then the quality got so much better in the CVs. So my advice was always don't just treat recruitment as a black box. Give up your time if you're the line manager or the hiring director to really make sure that the sources understand the type of practice you're trying to build. Because in this world, with high attrition rates, especially all over the place, and the competitive marketing digital, you really have to make sure that you're building a community of practice and not just treating people like resources. And you need a certain culture and a certain type of person to get them to want to stay with you as a company.
So how because I think your culture that you created, was I did feel like everyone there was so bright in your visual analytics practice. How do you create a culture like that within a corporate culture? Because we had I on my the previous show we spoke around there is I think there's a battle at the moment going on in the world where there's still the old pangs of corporate culture, but there is the majority of the workforce are agile, startup, lean sort of folk like us lot, where we are. And I'm not talking these buzzwords, but the way we are, the way we perceive our work, the way we perceive we're not salary driven, we're purpose driven, and so there is a massive divide. I don't think there's a massive divide, but I feel there's a massive battle going on between the old ways are sort of trying to cling on to the old ways, and the new ways are just doing it anyway. We're just moving forward. So that's why we see this battle on LinkedIn. However, how do you create a culture of development, I suppose, of progression, of innovation within a corporate environment?
We didn't obviously do it on our own, but we tried to champion what was being done on the digital floor. So when Accenture Digital was created, there was kind of almost an elitism culture created because the floor was different. You had all the open areas, the stand-up areas. There were no offices. It was all just meeting rooms. So you had senior leadership mixing with everybody. So we really understood what digital were trying to do, but we wanted to take it to the next level. And one of the things that I wanted to do straight away was not just talk about diversity, but actually make sure that we had a really good balance. Because the practice needed to be a community. So making sure that we attracted different genders and different backgrounds really, really worked very well. We had people socializing in the office and outside the office. People wanted to be together, friendships were being built, so people wanted to stay together, and they also collaborated across projects and across customers, which meant that everybody was training each other. When they learned something in one of the telcos, then one of the banking teams would learn it as well. So what we tried to do was we tried to make sure that we broke the rule, which is you go work on a customer. go and work in a customer's office or go to client site, and you're gone for 4 days, maybe 5 days a week. What I wanted to do is when I talked to clients, I said, please make sure that they can come work back in our office 2 or 3 days a week. The benefit to you is everything is moving so fast in analytics, you're going to miss out because they're not going to learn what's going on. So when we were learning how to do open source and custom and bespoke visualizations with the off-the-shelf tools, some clients embraced the innovation and they moved really fast. Other clients, they didn't really even understand it was there. But because the teams that we had within the visual analytics practice knew about it, they got to see other pieces of work and they embraced innovation as well. So we did a lot of cross-pollination.
One of the things that I seem to remember was that you had a couple of members of staff that they were Olympic athletes. They were constantly doing things outside of Accenture or outside of work, and that was actually like that was encouraged. You encourage people to be an Olympic athlete outside of work. So if they needed to have some time off, it wasn't sort of like a holiday thing. It was just, yeah, sure, go and do it. So how do you persuade a corporate organisation to do that? Because a lot of the people that are watching this right now, or a lot of people that are listening to this, they are in the talent acquisition space, they are in the HR space, they want to create that culture because they know that, well, because what I know and you know that works, and it creates a great place to work. But how do you persuade your seniors to make that happen?
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work, and unfortunately, I think it's down to poor architecture of a program of work or project management, and that is you become reliant on a single person or a single group of people. And if you've architected a delivery correctly, the work should be shared. Nobody should be a single point of failure. It's easy to say that, it's harder to implement it. But that's what you should set out to do, which means that if somebody does need to go away for training for 2 weeks before they go and compete for the UK or Great Britain, etc., then you can do that. The other side of it is it's about keeping the people. If right now, because of the competition in the market, if you're not an employer that can work around making sure that somebody can do what they're passionate about as well as professionally working for you, they will leave. Because absolutely. As you said, they're not just driven by how much money they make, they're driven by what they can do and what they can accomplish.
And that's the thing. That's why our generation, Adam, is probably the most fickle generation. Well, not fickle, but fickle to a corporate point of view, because, or fickle to a, I suppose we're the first people to go, actually, no, we want what we want, and we're not going to accept nothing less. You're
lumping me in with you now.
I am.
I'm called out. I'm called a Zennial.
Zennial
between.
I thought you were a millennial, weren't you?
Well, the original definition was born after 1980, so I'm a millennial.
And that's what I thought.
But now they've got this 1977 to 83.
Right.
You remember 8-track, you remember tapes, and you grew up with records before they were cool again. And so you remember a time when there wasn't technology before computers. You went through school when there weren't computers really in, or there was.
When was the first time you got a computer? Obviously dial-up.
Yeah, so my dad is a chartered accountant, and he computerized his practice very early. So I had the original PC when it came out. It wasn't me, it was just in his office, so I got to play around with it. And I was a very early adopter. I had a modem in 94 before the internet, and it was all dial-up. So I played with them very early. But I never did a course or really did anything with computers until I actually went to university.
Really?
My school didn't really have any IT courses or anything like that, even at A-level. So it was really university when I was actually learning from somebody else instead of teaching myself something.
Yeah, hacking it.
So that's why we're called Zennials.
Amazing. So let's go into this, because I think I'm really interested in... I suppose the challenges that you're going to face when you're with this product, because I know for a fact, I've seen the product, it's shit hot. I know that it's going to benefit people.
Make sure you get hot in there, not just it's yeah.
Yeah, it's shit hot. For me, where I see this being so valuable is the monitoring of, first of all, the quality, but also the actual backgrounds of people within the actual platform. So who inputs that data? So how do you have that data? Where does it come from?
Yeah. So some of the recruitment companies have actually said, we'd love to take this product and offer it as a service to our customers as a USP for them. But they're worried about understanding how they get the data, because at the end of the day, they're not analytics companies. Whereas day in and day out for the last 15 years, all I've been doing is working with clients
to get their data.
Can you help? I need your data to be able to solve this problem that you've hired me to do. So it's kind of business as usual for me. So some of the things that we would do is we can either offer our design and expertise around the application, and they might have an internal technical team that want to take it on, and that's fine. Here, you can buy the design, a lot of the front-end code's all done for you, and that's great. Or we can iterate it and customize it for you. Or we can do the end-to-end, which is we come in, we work out what their source systems are, where the data is, and then we pull it into our data model, and we map it all together, and it works. But what happens if they want something and they don't capture the data? Let's say, who's certified to interview? How did you know who was certified to interview? Was it in one of the systems?
No, to be honest, you had to go and just ask. Just basically just go and ask the managers. Say, is anyone? And no, they didn't even know. Because obviously, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just that there was no centralized point of.
And how many people work for the company?
Thousands, right?
400,000.
Yeah.
People. So what we've done is it's not just a read-only dashboard or something like that. It's a proper app, like the DigiMasters example, which means that you click a button and it says add new interviewer, and you actually write it back, and now you've captured that data and it's in there, and then you can see how often they're interviewing. So what we've tried to do is we'll take the data, so we're not replicating it from companies that have this information ready, and integrate it into the analytics app. And if they don't have the information but they still want that module, then we have web forms that allow you to actually enter the data in there, so it's all in one place.
So what does this mean for gender diversity? What does this mean? How can your app support that? And I'm not talking just at the sort of junior end. I'm talking right across the business. We're talking actual problem solving right across the business, which in the tech space we know is a huge divide, right? Mm-hmm. So how can your app help people or help organisations achieve the goal of what they need to do, which is
create a
more diverse culture? Yeah.
It can't. It's not a silver bullet. What the app will do in its current state is it will make the problem, in inverted commas, more understood. You can see it. You can see where teams have good diversity, and you can see teams where they have poor diversity. The intelligence isn't there to go, the reason is because of X, Y, and Z, which is, I've looked through the job description and you're not using enough words that would attract talent from abroad or talent.
What do you think about those sort of platforms that enable that will say they can tell what your job is or your job description is going to or what types of people your job description is going to attract based on wording? Is that true? Is that
again, it's probability. So it's the same with search engines and keywords and tagging, and it's called metadata. And that is that certain words do resonate better with different demographics, and that's proven. So I do think if it's implemented correctly, there are certain things that you can do to actually attract different types of people. If you're looking for designers and you don't use certain words around the technology stack, let's say the Adobe tool set, and you're using unknown solutions, they might not be attracted to it. Also, if you're using words that you've invented, I think our previous employer was quite bad at this. They like to make up their own words that didn't really resonate in the industry.
Yeah.
That is a big no-no. I don't recommend.
But didn't you coin the phrase visual analytics? Wasn't that your word? Wasn't that your phrase?
Yes, but it meant something out in academia.
But absolutely. But what I'm saying is, isn't it interesting how your phrase, your phrase, is now widely adopted by industry as a whole?
Yes.
What was it before?
So when it first started, we were advanced data visualization, and then we turned it to visual analytics. It got adopted by some of our technology partners, and they started calling themselves visual analytics tools instead of data visualization, and then it really took off. Maybe I'm being a bit hypocritical, but visual analytics, I thought people will understand what that's about.
Yeah.
Maybe not completely, like the methodology, how we go about doing it, but at least they knew the area it was in, and it's not just about using the word interactive. And
yeah,
what
of course.
does that mean?
Yeah.
And mobility, is that about putting wheelchair
I think it's really
ramps
cool
in,
because
or?
what I'm getting from you is that no, I do feel like you are very user centric, and I know that's another buzzword, right? But I feel like you're always thinking about a user, and analytics doesn't need to be a very difficult thing. I mean, the amount of spreadsheets that everyone's using, and I speak to people all the time and are using Excel for their talent pipelining. And I think it doesn't need to be like that anymore. It's just that we've done that, and there's no one to come along to try and change things.
Depends on the type of person you are. If you are an inventor and you're building a product just so that somebody buys your patent and you don't care if people use it or not, then fine.
Yeah.
If you're the type of person that's very passionate about what they're building and they want people to enjoy it and use it and it's adding value, then you're user-centric and you have to understand what that user wants, otherwise they're not going to use it.
So let's go into now, and this is really good. So thanks for this. By the way, guys, we're going to have links to a couple of shorts, I guess, videos and examples of Adam's product. And what's the product called?
The one we're talking about, talent management.
Talent management. So it's really cool. I'd implore you to have a look at it. It's really cool. And I don't necessarily find these things interesting in the talent space. I've had to use them in my previous jobs. I've had to use them. But the reason I find this one interesting is purely because of the actual the user experience of it. Like, I haven't even used it. I've just seen it, but I know a good user experience when I see it. And you've thought about a lot of things, a lot of pain points within the recruitment industry. But this is great, but I want to talk now about virtual reality, because...
What's that?
Exactly, what is virtual reality? But I think also what's impressed me about what you guys, what your previous role was doing, and I don't know if you're doing it right now, we haven't discussed this yet, because obviously we've only just spent 5 minutes before this interview. But virtual reality is something that really excites me. It really it's something that I think it's got legs, but how far can it go? I don't know, because at the end of the day, you're still sitting there with a headset on, and that headset becomes uncomfortable after an hour, right? So tell me about virtual reality. Tell me what your thoughts are on it.
Let me tell you about why I did what I did.
Yeah.
So obviously we had visual analytics, and we were doing a lot of storytelling through analytics, and everything's obviously 2D on the screen. Then the Oculus Rift came out and all these other headsets like HTC Vive, and I decided that 3D visualization should be something that we need to look at. So I had a look at it. I found some of the very early demos really immersive. Only for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, there was lots of problems with them still, but I saw that it had great potential. And honestly, just from a gimmick perspective, I thought this could be a useful tool to get people to understand why storytelling is so important, and understanding information and getting insight is so important. So I was just going to use it as another way of talking about visualization at first. Then we actually started to hire people that knew how to build the apps inside Unity and Unreal, etc. And we actually worked out that this is different. You can't just do a wireframe and an illustration and give it to a developer to build. You actually have to think about how you're going to use 3D sound. How do you make sure people don't get motion sickness? How do you actually create something that's immersive? How do you use haptics, vibrations and things like that? And how do you make sure people don't walk into a wall? And that was another challenge.
Let's just stop there. How often have you seen people walk into walls?
Never. No, it's never happened before at all.
With headsets on. Have you actually seen people walk into walls?
Yes. I used to let my brain get tricked. It's very easy. And then I used to relax a lot and go, I'm just going to go for it and forget I'm tethered and see how real my brain will feel this experience. And yes, I did sit down on a chair that wasn't there, lean on a table that wasn't there, I was in a funfair demo, and I was going to put down a gun, and I leant on it, and then I fell over, but that was the early days. That was just when we were just trying to work out what to do.
But how does that? So actually, I'll let you jump back into what you're saying, because I really want you to finish what you're saying. But I've got a couple of other questions around this, because this excites me so much. So yeah, so how do you solve those haptics? How do you make sure that people don't walk into a wall?
With other technologies that everybody's been doing it for a while, you read up, you hire talent, you look at it. With this technology, it was a case of, we're the bleeding edge, we're making this up, especially when it came to enterprise. So we had to trial and error. We had to fail fast and move on. And that really helped us identify how to do agile correctly. How to make sure that when we only had, let's say, small budgets around innovation, that we were really focusing on how to use it the best way. Let's say, kicking a rugby ball, what do we do? Do we actually make passing a rugby ball extremely similar to how you would do it in a game, so passing backwards? Or, considering how the actual hardware and technology worked and the user experience, do you just make it more underarm throwing naturally, more like an American football user experience? And we went with the latter, just because we had to understand who the users are. And the users were corporate users at Twickenham, coming in for their first VR experience. And we just wanted to make it as easy as possible and as simple as possible. So we were all passionate about rugby, but instead of going for realism, we went for user experience by understanding the users. And that was trial and error, because we tried to work out the physics of spinning the ball and throwing it over your shoulder. But then when you've got cables and cords, it just didn't work. But the short answer is, yeah, we got a lot of things wrong until we got it right.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
And this, so virtual reality, so because it seemed to have gone up, it seems to have massive trend, and now it seems to have sort of dropped back down, and now it's sort of like on a stagnant level. Is it a gimmick? I mean, is the technology just not there right now? Will we be in a place where, will we be in a place where we could just sit in our room? I could sit in my room and never have to leave it.
It's a case of constraints within the technology. Right now, the best devices are tethered, because we didn't have the wireless technology or the compute power or the battery and power technology to make it lightweight, really simple, untethered experience. Now we have better Wi-Fi, so you have the untethered, but we still can't get that really high resolution 4K, 8K experience right close to your face with a processor that's really lightweight and you don't feel it. So this is just first generation. Obviously, VR has been around for a long time, but this iteration, this is the first gen. By about, I think, third gen, so not that far away, we'll see higher adoption, everything will be cheaper, and the quality will be a lot better. But you need early adopters. You need people like us in digital to actually keep pushing it, looking for the use cases, so we can refine what it does. If we don't use it and think about how it could use, it will just go away and die a death like it had done in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s again.
But I found that with artificial intelligence as well. 70s was artificial intelligence isn't a new thing. Like it was spoken about in the 70s. There was a couple of doctors, the names escape me now, but there was a couple of doctors talking about it at that time, 80s, 90s. But really, this past 2 years, even I think year and a half,
technology.
And it is that it? It's technology.
The chip in your mobile phone and like the latest iPhone is so powerful compared to even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
The fact that you've got GPUs, graphical processing units, that allow AI algorithms to run so quickly on such small devices, so you can have Alexa, you can have Siri, you can have Cortana, and Google Assistant. That is the game changer. You had to wait for certain technologies to catch up. And right now, one of the biggest issues we have is power. The battery technology is so far behind where processing wants to go. Once we solve the power issue, I think you'll see everything jump really far ahead.
So this has always actually interested me, and I'm going off tangent now because I wasn't even thinking I was going to talk about this. But why is it that batteries are the most difficult thing to solve?
I mean, as a physicist, it's all the chemist's fault. It's all chemistry's issue. I mean, from just a general knowledge perspective, I mean, it's chemical reactions. And right now, we just need a better way of storing those chemical reactions. We're using lithium ions because it's the lightest ion in a conductor that you can use, and that's why we moved away from nickel metal hydride.
So you actually know quite a lot about batteries. I thought I was going to stump you out there with a question.
Right. No, at the moment, it's just a case of we need to find something that's stable, that's more dense, that can store energy, but it's light as well. And right now
doesn't exist.
Well, you've got fuel cells, which look promising, but how expensive are they to make? How stable are they? You don't want them exploding. It's like a Samsung phone. But that's why, I mean, you've packed so many ions and so much energy into a very dense, small space. That's why they need so many quality controls on battery checks. Otherwise, they do heat up and they explode. It's a chemical reaction.
Did you see there was a viral video going out the other day where it was a Tesla vehicle, and when that goes on fire, it's very difficult to put out that fire from the battery because
it's fueling itself.
Exactly, that's exactly it. And so Tesla now have people on standby. So if there's a fire, they actually send one of their people to the fire department who are on the site, and they will basically guide them on how to put it out.
Well, I mean, I don't love the fact that Teslas are exploding. What I do like is that we're adapting to the new technology. So I'm working with a client, and we're talking about rescue, things like RSC, green flag, AA, stuff like that. How are they going to adapt to electric vehicles? Different types of engines. Are they changing their vans? What's in their vans? Are they going to have mobile charging units? So when people run out of fuel, they're actually running out of power. So they can't just bring up fuel. So what are they doing to adapt? How are they tracking the growth of electric vehicles? I'd love to understand their strategy. And I want to use analytics to help predict when they should move or how much they should, what they should do to their fleet to adapt to the new way of working. Why doesn't everybody have an Uber user experience when they're waiting for something to turn up? What's the barrier to entry? Those are the types of questions I really enjoy trying to answer.
Yeah, I think these are great questions. So I think, leading on from that, what do you think the real world problems are that you could solve? So what company could come to you and you could solve problems, and give me examples of what problems? So you've just given me a great example there. So for AA, that's a problem. Yeah, they're going to have to solve that very soon, because pretty soon, sooner or later, in the next 10 years, I think maybe even fuel vehicles, maybe not for 10 years, 15 years, fuel vehicles will probably be outlawed, be all electric. Yeah. So that is also a huge problem for businesses, because there are businesses that...
pick an industry.
This is a really good, actually. Yeah, this is a great one.
You've probably stumped me. You pick one out.
So let's pick an industry. Okay, so let's take, for instance, butchers. So how can you solve large scale... actually, because this is actually a real problem. So I watched a documentary before, What the Health, or any of these documentaries, and they're saying that the scale of the cattle market is crazy, and that's actually what's...
We're linking into global warming now, and...
Yeah, this is great. So let's talk about this. So let's go into... So I am a butcher, or I'm a large scale, I kill cows. Yeah, that's what I do, and I sell my meat to...
So I'm going to jump in and go. I usually come from just me as a consumer, what I know. So I've not obviously worked in this industry, but what I would love to understand using analytics is when you're going into a supermarket and you're looking at vegetarian food or different types of food which have alternative products in them, or you've got the gluten-free and dairy-free solutions, why are they the same price or more expensive? What is happening in the supply chain that makes it more expensive to buy? Because I tend to see all the specialised food in a Marks and Spencer's over an Asda. Why do certain people want to go and have their gluten-free, even if they don't need it, they're not a celiac? Or why do they go for vegetarian? Is it because it's trendy? And sometimes it is. And how can you actually use that to actually reduce the amount of cattle needed and the amount of food? And how do you get the people that hold out and they want their meat and 2 veg and they want their standard meals? How do you make it more affordable for them so that you can reduce the problem? I mean, I'm not a vegetarian, but I do think, in my perception, that it seems to be trendy to be vegan and vegetarian.
Yeah,
and in America, I read a study that some kids have malnutrition issues, even though they're quite well off, because the parents have decided that they have certain ailments and they shouldn't eat certain.
Well, I'm going to say something now. People are going to kick off about this, but remember when you were like, when we were younger, when I was like 5 years old. Maybe because I'm from a council estate, no one could afford to be vegan. But the point is, but no one, you never heard of this sort of like, oh, I'm a celiac, or I have, or I'm lactose intolerant, or I can't eat wheat, or whatever it is, whatever these are. But you never heard of this. And I'm not saying they're not real, but what I'm saying is that, I never heard of this before, but it seems like in the past couple of years, there's lots of people who have these issues.
And I'm lactose intolerant.
But why are you lactose intolerant? Was you lactose? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that is more, I think it's, again, so we'll get lots of comments on this, but for me, sometimes it's ethnicity. There are certain humans, like I think it's the lot of lactose intolerant people in Asia. These issues have been around for a long time. I think that other people that don't have acute symptoms now think it's trendy, and that's just a bit weird. But we have this whole celebrity culture as well.
Well, we're in Shoreditch right now, and I think if you go out there, you get a £5 cheese sandwich.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Liverpool, so I'm a Skelton.
So yeah, exactly. So you're on the same vibe as I am. We're both from outside of London, and London is a very interesting place for this. Like I said, there's a £5 cheese melt out there, and I'm like, £5 for a cheese sandwich, £5. It's cost you 50p.
Aldgate, if you get anything under a tenner now, it's great.
I know, exactly. Yeah, you feel privileged. Like it's a bargain down there. Great. So I want to talk a bit more about this virtual reality stuff. So virtual reality, what other industries do you think are going to be impacted by it? And obviously we're not there right now, and like you said, I know that, but I think that you do need the pioneers like yourself. You do need the people who are pushing this, because otherwise that technology won't advance, because it'll just be stagnant. So first of all, what industries are going to be impacted most from virtual reality?
Well, if we expand it to XR, so augmented reality, virtual reality, and if you use the Microsoft term like mixed reality, I would say that there are some obvious industries such as tourism. They're already adopting it a lot. Education. I'm a real fan of using these immersive experiences for education. So imagine the Open University, instead of just being on watching a video or going on a Skype call type thing and speaking to someone, but you're not physically, but virtually in a room, and you get to interact. So one of the demos that we built was a virtual boardroom. And it was a case that we could all sit down. I could see you gesticulating. I could see your lips moving, and I got a lot more empathy. And I could see people when they were looking at me. I had the eye contact, and I really enjoyed that experience of being in virtual reality, talking to people. Whereas when we were doing Skype calls and stuff like that, or WebEx, how often do people even turn the camera on?
Yeah, they don't. Right. That's actually that's a great point, actually.
And I just like the fact that what we had was we could be talking right now virtually, and when we were talking about the app or anything like that, I can bring up the window and we can actually see it, enjoy it. We can have as many screens as we wanted. Yeah. And everything can be captured and recorded if you wanted. So it was just a case of how immersive do you want it and how much interaction do you want? And I'm a big fan of collaboration. So those multi-user or multiplayer experiences in VR, they're the most immersive to me. So I was recently in Westfield in Which one is it?
Stratford or
No, the other one.
Or
Shepherd's Bush.
Shepherd's Bush, yeah.
And they've got The Void, which is the hyper reality Star Wars experience.
Right.
If you haven't gone to try it out and you like Star Wars, and
I'm not a
try
Star
VR,
Wars fan. I don't watch TV. I'm not patient enough. I don't even watch my own episodes of this.
Okay, so go to try The Void. I don't know how long it's on for. It's about £32 for 15-minute experience. But basically, you're a stormtrooper with 4 friends, and you can see them in VR, and you're running around an Imperial base with lasers, guns, and you're fighting your way out. It
sounds
so
fun.
Amazing. The floors rumble. You're on a lava planet. They've got heat jets coming out. The full works. If you want to try VR for the first time, go and try The Void. That's what I recommend.
Okay, awesome.
But other industries, defence, obviously, you've got things like that. We had certain
How defence though?
So one of the problems you ask them is, what's a problem that you've got? And it's got things like a navy, new sailors coming on board a boat or a submarine even. And they have no idea where everything is. So imagine if you could sit at home or sit somewhere in an office, and you could walk around the new frigate or the new submarine that you're going on, get a feel for it, understand how fire drills or emergencies work, go through health and safety issues, and navigate you around. So once you're on the boat, you're more productive straight away. Or on the submarine, you're completely productive because you know the left, right down there. You know where you should be going. You know where your berth is. Even simple use cases of that saves a fortune.
Yeah.
It reduces accidents as well. So I'm not talking about Call of Duty training soldiers on how to shoot people and things like that. It's more of a case of how to keep production levels high and make sure everybody is as productive as possible. Amazing.
So I guess my final question for you would be what do you think?
Why do I have DigiTales?
No, not at all, not at all. So actually tell me about DigiTales. Actually, while we're on there, because I've got more questions about artificial intelligence, Sophia, all this sort of stuff. So, because I think that you know, virtual reality or actually virtual reality, which is a person, which is a virtual really person, but it's not virtual, it's a robot, but it's not really a real person. So anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. But tell me about DigiTales.
So about a year ago, before I started DigiMasters, I created DigiTales, which was a YouTube channel. First of all, it was just a bit of creative fun to actually, review games, review technology. I got so much technology, obviously, with the virtual reality stuff, and I wanted to talk about it, etc. But then I realized I could actually, dog food all the stuff we talk about, do AdWords campaigns, find out more about Google Analytics, Adobe, Facebook, why you would use Instagram. What's Instagram for an enterprise? Why would you use Facebook? Why would you use YouTube, etc.? Why do you use Twitch? And I have a really good understanding of which platform to use, what type of media right now. I love doing photography. Now I'm doing obviously a lot of videography, and a big passionate about drone flying and all the film production there. So for a year, I ran a YouTube channel called DigiTales, and it's taken off. We get invited to lots of conferences, events. It's great having a press pass and queue jumping. And it's just a bit of fun, but it's a great corporate icebreaker as well. It's a bit different. So what do you do at the weekend? Well, I make and produce YouTube videos, and then people take a look at them, and it's just something to do. And now
so you got 10,000 subscribers.
Yes.
I've never seen you on a video.
Well, I do a lot of the writing, the research, and the filming, and a lot of the editing. But I am on some. So when we made that Lego BB-8, I'm in that one. But I'm in a lot of them. You just can't see me.
Can't see it. That's it. You
are
are there. You just can't see it.
I mean, if you want to see,
I actually think it's a very entertaining show, and I think it's probably the first technology show that I've actually really enjoyed watching, because I think it's funny as well.
I mean, Olivia is so creative.
Yeah,
she's the presenter, obviously, who used to work with you.
Yeah, that's right.
At Accenture, and she's just amazing on camera, so passionate about absolutely technology. So I think most people want to see what Olivia has to say.
I think Olivia's a better presenter than you are, for certain. That's and I don't mean that by no offense.
You watch the DigiMasters.
Yeah, exactly. And I often watch those too, because I always want to see you. So no, really good. So I want to finally speak about artificial intelligence, how that's going to impact your product too, because I think, yes, you've got insight now into, you've got a way for companies, for the first time ever, I think, for talent acquisition companies or talent acquisition functions in companies to understand their data properly. So what is the next phase for you? Is it AI?
So I would like to automate a lot of the processes that we see issues through the actual application. So when we're saying that the quality of the CVs isn't good enough, that's great. We've raised the problem and we're going to take an action to try and solve it and speak to people. But what happens if we decide that maybe we should remove the bottleneck about manual CV reviews and put machine learning and AI in place that can actually give us a probability on how good a fit a potential candidate could be. And I'm not just talking about keyword search, it's about potentially looking for keywords, but then also scraping their social media, their LinkedIn profile, getting them to do an interview, and having an interaction with a chatbot or something like that, see how good their communication is, how intuitive, what's their answer to what's your favorite jelly bean and all those weird and random questions you sometimes get in interviews. If you could do all of that and actually gamify
That's
it,
real matching, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you can also make it fun. You don't have to make it like you're in a dark room with a light and you've got to get these answers correct. You can just see how people react to certain situations, see how they tick, and you can use AI to do that. And the reason why you'd use AI is it helps scale it. So if you're a smaller company, then brilliant, because you can have that one-on-one relationship, and that's amazing. But if you're trying to hire 100 people in the next quarter, then, well, how do you scale that? And I think AI could definitely help with that.
AI absolutely will definitely help with that. But also you need then the infrastructure of recruiters, right? So because you can't just rely on a platform. You need, I don't think, our whole platform is about actually embracing recruiters and saying recruitment agencies are not dying. But the way in which we interact with recruiters is absolutely changing.
I would say the companies don't need to die, but I would say that all the people that recruitment agencies hire that are literally pinging people on LinkedIn every day because they've got to hit their number and it's a numbers game, that needs to change. We need to get them doing different types of tasks, more high-level tasks, and you hand that numbers game over to a chatbot.
Yeah, absolutely. That is
exactly
it.
I get so many pings.
How many do you get a day?
Probably around about 25.
Wow, a day.
It's because I've got something like Click or Tableau in my CV.
Yeah,
so I'll be
of course.
offered a low-level job.
What's the lowest level job you've been offered recently as well?
I think it was a contractor role at 250 a day.
Are you sure you don't want to take that?
I'm tempted.
Dylan, do you want to take that? Dylan, our video team, go take it. Just train him up on Tableau for a day. He'll go there.
Okay. I get the finder's fee, right?
Yeah, of course you do. Of course. Really good, Adam. I think I could literally speak to you forever about this. It's been an absolute pleasure. So guys, if you want to, so anyone who's out there, if you want to know a bit more about what Adam's up to, you just need to click a couple of links that are down below. But I'm not just saying this because Adam's a friend of mine. I'm actually saying this because I've seen the product and I'm very interested in using it for our clients at Recruited. I'm very interested in using what he has because I think there's a lot of value that can be extracted from his product. And so thanks a lot, Adam, for coming in. I do really appreciate you taking the time. Great. All right, guys. So next time, our next show will be out next Monday. As every week, we're going to be launching a episode of AntonioTalks talk show every Monday at 12 p.m. GMT. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Subscribe to our podcast on SoundCloud. We know the distribution unit now, which is great. And other than that, have a great week ahead. Thanks. Bye.